gentlemen, the black and white minstrel show.
Oh, Mr. Wu, what shall I do? I've got those kind of lighthouse shining rosy blue. This funny feeling keeps round me stealing. Why don't you throw your sweetheart over too?
I'd sung with various groups, and one of the groups that I virtually started with, and my wife was involved in as well, was a group called the Linden Singers, and we did sort of regular Sunday night programs on TV with a guy called Max Jaffa. That eventually, of course, like everything, sort of came to an end, and then a colleague of mine said, why don't you audition for George Mitchell? I said, oh, you mean the black and white guy? He said, yeah, he's always looking for singers. So I thought, oh, I'll phone him up and see if I can sing for him. And of course I can remember phoning him, and he said, oh, we don't need to hear you. He said, if you're interested, he said, you're in. So that was the time when I just went along and was one of the lads singing in the chorus. We used to go along to a little studio in Holland Park, and I think there were no more than 2 trumpets, like 1 trombone, guitar, bass, and it was a very small outfit. And gradually it grew and grew until it was a very very good, exciting sound. The thing that people do remember, of course, are the sort of Saturday night TV shows. And in those days, you see, people would actually, they would stay in to watch the show. I suppose there are a few shows these days, but not many that had the sort of, the appeal. We were able to sort of get something like 20 million people watching. Now that's unheard of today. Even these sort of reality TVs struggle to get that sort of thing. But we were doing it practically every week. Probably because there were not many channels to choose from.
How I love those eyes that shine.
Oh, I'm gone, yes I'm gone, with the love that's ever growing to that cold black mammy of mine. Not a cent, and my clothes are only lent. All the same, she'll think I'm just fine.
Oh, behind the barn, down on my knees.
Tell us what you heard.
I thought I heard a chicken sneeze. Polly, Molly, doodle all the day. Fairly well, my fairy fair. But I'm off to Louisiana for to see Miss Susanna singing Polly, Molly, doodle all the day. Oh, some folks like to...
I heard that John Bolter, who was the lead tenor at the time, was leaving. He'd spent 10 years at the Victoria Palace, and I wandered off towards the loo, and George Mitchell was doing the same sort of thing, you see. And as we were walking up towards the loo, he said, I don't know if you're interested, Ted, but he said, it's all yours if you want it. I shall never forget that. It's all yours if you want it. And I must have looked puzzled, you see. And he said, you do know that John is leaving? I said, yeah. Well, he said, you can have the job if you're interested.
Sweet, let's all sing like the birdies sing. Sweet, 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 sweet. Let's all waddle like nightingales. Give your throats a treat. Take your time from the birds. Now you all know the words. Tweet, 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 tweet.
We did 2 shows a night, every night, including Saturdays. That's unheard of these days. You might get 2 shows on a Saturday, but 2 shows every night, you'd be regarded as a killer these days. We'd rehearse. We'd rehearse all day doing the TV thing, putting it together. And when I look back on it now, we used to churn out a show every week. And you see, we'd rehearse all day, doing the TV, and then we'd look at our watch and think, oh my God, we've only got half an hour to get to the Victoria Palace. Which you needed at least half an hour to put the blackface on and whatnot and get into your costume. And so yeah, we used to sort of drive like mad, which you could do in those days. And so it was full on, certainly for 13 weeks as we were doing the telly. We were at the Victoria Palace when there were power cuts all over the country. Because sometimes then, you see, we would go into the theatre and there'd be no lights. And we'd often start the show with sort of anything that they could get their hands on to light the stage. And not only that, because we were using, we mimed the show. It wasn't sung for real, it was all on tape. So you can imagine if the power went off during a song, and it did, there'd be people singing, Swanee, how I love you, my dear.
Our hearts were entertaining too. We stood beneath the
Oh my God, what's up? And then it just, and it'd all come back, and you wouldn't know where you were. You didn't know whether you were doing the right moves on stage, or what. That was. We used to laugh. I don't think the powers that be thought it was funny, but.
No business like show business like no business like no.
Everything about it is appealing. Everything the traffic will allow. Nowhere could you get that happy feeling when you are stealing that extra bow.
I think they did 25 years on the BBC. And of course there'd been rumblings for some time before. The sort of people in Parliament, on both sides, whether it was government or opposition, if they hadn't come up with anything specific to say, somebody would stand up and call the minstrel show all the names under the sun and say, this show shouldn't be on now. It's all against all the things that we stand for, and why should white people black up and all that. Irrespective of the fact, that the show's still doing pretty good viewing figures every time. So of course, eventually, you see, the BBC said, "Oh, I think it's time. It's time we stopped. We can't be doing this." All the sort of PC thing that goes on these days, where you can't say this and you can't say the other. So they virtually pulled the plug on the show, which in many ways seemed a shame, but I suppose all shows have their time. I had a lovely letter when I was at the Victoria Palace, and it said, "Dear Mr. Darling," which made me feel very posh, and said that my mummy brought me to see the show on whenever, Wednesday or Thursday, as it was my birthday, And oh, I did enjoy it, and you in particular. And she signed herself off, and she, I can't remember what her name was now, but then she put P.S. I'm black too. And I thought that was lovely, lovely. Shall we give it a go? Who's that coming down the street? Who's that looking so petite? Who's that coming down to meet me here? She's the girl I rave about. She's the one I'm blue without. She's my coochie honey baby dear. Oh yes sir, that's my baby. No sir, I don't mean maybe. Yes sir, that's my baby now. Yes ma'am, we've decided. No ma'am, we won't hide it. Yes ma'am, you're invited now. By the way, when we reach the preacher I say, oh yes sir, that's my baby. No sir, I don't mean maybe. Yes sir, that's my baby now. New girl maid has got the shade on sweet Georgia Brown. Two left feet but oh so neat and sweet Georgia Brown. They all signed one to die for sweet Georgia Brown. Tell you just why, you know I don't lie, well not much. It's been said she knocked 'em dead when she